So I'm not sure if you guys saw this story the other day. It was going viral online, and it's gotten picked up by a lot of the podcast sphere around the term stay-at-home sons. One of the things about Gen Z is they love to label pretty much everything. They give every habit, every action, every trend a name. And it's great in this space because it gives you something to talk about. It labels it and it makes it like tangible when you speak about it, which in the past it was just social behavior. It was just human behavior that was then distilled down into an idea. So when it's given a name, it's nice and clean and you could talk about it in segments like this. But what I find interesting is that with so much of this stuff, the form of critique is real, but there's more to it than that. And I want to go through a couple of these examples here. We're talking about this young Jeopardy winner who talked about being a stay-at-home son. It's how he introduced himself on Jeopardy, which was he was tongue-in-cheek making a reference to being unemployed. He's done with college. He's got a degree. I think he said he's got a master's in political science. And he kind of wove it in later after it went viral with the Wall Street Journal. He talked about it as a rejection of hustle culture, which of course, you know, it's the Luke Belmars of the world. And the Andrew Tates, they're selling you some type of course book, some way to improve your life. But I also think when you talk about these things in the sphere, it can offer perspective from the other side. So I want to look at a couple of these clips here after we discuss that. So let's first look at the start of this clip from the Will Cain show discussing this phenomenon.
A Wall Street Journal headline got our attention. The new dream job for young men, stay-at-home son. It's a phrase that's taken off since 27-year-old Brendan Leo won $59,000 on Jeopardy. And he has a master's degree in political science, but he's unemployed and lives with his parents. So are stay-at-home sons here to stay? Joining me now is the Ruthless podcast team. Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, John Ashbrook, and Michael Duncan. Take bets, take odds. Which one of these guys lives at home right now at age? It's Duncan. It's Duncan. I saw the way he bowed his head.
Okay. I get it. I get it. Look, there's a lot to complain about from every generation. I absolutely get it. But when I see this type of stuff, I see it as this weird form of shaming that doesn't exactly ingratiate yourself to the next generation. And to be fair, you know, the studies have shown recently that there has been a large trend towards young men to conservatism, whereas young women have all been heavily moving to the left and, you know, to leftism, not even just liberalism, but to leftism. And the laughter, it's weird because the way I see it is like before that in previous generations, you know, you were told to go to college, to get a diploma, to get your degree and start your life, not, you know, taking into fact that you took out massive amounts of student loan debt for degrees that ended up going nowhere. And the system in a lot of ways is broken. And one of the things in American culture is that it is seen as some type of negative to live at home with your parents. It's something that a bully, that an adult bully would shame a character for in a movie. And I get it. Again, one of the things is you have to be able to see things from both perspectives. And there is such a thing as somebody who is kind of stalled and they're not doing anything with their life. They're sitting at home playing video games all day, every day. There's no balance in their life. They're not looking for work. That's what NEETs were, if I remember. It was not in employment, education, or training. And there was the rise of NEETs because the decision was around the idea that, look, even when I get a job, it doesn't matter because the wages haven't increased next to the rate of inflation. I'm never going to own a home. I'm going to stay at home with my parents in a state of permanent adolescence and indulge my every whim because an attainable future just isn't there for me. And I think one of the blind spots that conservatives have with this is that shaming may work from time to time. It may work on an individual level, but when we talk about these things, nuance matters. And the truth of the matter is that in a lot of ways, America has built a rigged system that has prevented future generations from getting ahead. Now, don't mistake me. It is still your job to do that for everyone, no matter the instance. it is not right to sit around and complain 24/7 about your situation if you're not doing anything to actually make your situation better. But the contestant on Jeopardy, where this was based around, wasn't even an example of that. This is somebody who finished their degree in a field, and it looks to be imminently employable, and he looks to be on the search for a job. So why is it that we turn every one of these trends into a commentary on previous generations? I also have the Tommy Laren clip here where she makes it about gender. So let's listen to this part.
Are the stay-at-home sons we don't Medicaid, and maybe some of those folks are the stay-at-home sons we don't know. But I'll tell you this, leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy like a stay-at-home son. They did.
So laziness goes across all generations, and is the idea here that being lazy and at home is better than a millennial who decided to go to college, get a degree that they aren't going to use, and ended up working as a barista? Because again, you're taking something that was said in jest and you're making it an entire movement. I would say criticize the NEETs, criticize the ones who talk about not in employment. They're not even searching for it. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a cutesy, as you call it, pushback against the label of unemployed because he is unemployed. But again, whose hearts and minds do you expect to win over with these ideas?
Much the same thing with quiet quitting, where you can go to work and do less, and if you call it quiet quitting, it's somehow better. Okay,
every single generation has done quiet quitting. There is no such thing as, okay, let me rephrase that. Every generation has included employees who have just done the bare minimum to get by and not get fired. Gen Z is unique in the idea that they put a label to this phenomenon, but it is absolutely not a new phenomenon. And if you're wondering why this exists, it's because previous generations in this country have built up a world, a country where their chances of success feel impossible. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of time that we spend online. I think there's a lot of doomerism in the culture today because so much of our life is done digitally and so little of it seems to be happening in the real world. But being in the real world bolsters real feelings, whether good or bad, and can be beneficial. Whereas if you're spending all your time online, you're going to be seeing nothing but depression. You're going to be hearing about the home market being priced out of ever owning a home. You're going to be talking about wages that have not increased with the rate of inflation. You're going to have leftists talking about the doomerism of climate change, why you shouldn't have kids because having kids will contribute to the destruction of the earth. Everything is bad. Everything is horrible. Nothing is ever going to be good again. And this is something that is felt online. As I was saying earlier on the show today, you know, I have friends who are online a lot, and I have friends who live more in the real world than the average everyday person does today. And they seem invariably happier or at the very least more equipped for the future at hand because they are not spending so much time surrounded by doomerism and propaganda. So look, we have a generation of kids who feel priced out of a future. It's only going to get worse with future generations. I don't know what the solution is for all of this. I do believe that for all of us, the answer is to take responsibility for our own actions. I believe that radical responsibility and owning what your choices are, owning what happens to you, even at times where it feels like it wasn't a decision or a choice of your own making, something happened to you, owning it and learning to live a life of gratitude for the things that you do have is a path forward that can help everyone, because when we have gratitude, we have perspective for both the good and the bad. When you have gratitude for the things that you have feel magical. And when you have gratitude for the things that you have, you don't feel so hard done by for the things that you don't have. But the thing is these concepts, these ideas are nuanced in a lot of ways, and we have to take them as they come with each individual person. But one of the things that we tend to do these days is that we label everything, and these labels that then push back on these ideas that new generations are coming out with, it spreads the divide even farther between every generation, which is always something that's existed. You know, the boomers felt very different from Gen X, which felt very different from millennials, despite the fact that Gen X feels in a lot of ways like a forgotten generation. I highly doubt many Gen Xers would want to be, you know, attributed to a life of a millennial like myself. So I just wonder what you do. They've been priced out of everything, and now they're being shamed for everything. And you wonder where this culture of nihilism comes from for so much in Gen Z, which is something we've talked about a lot on this show. She even goes on to make this a gendered issue, talking about how it has more to do with men than women.
But Laura, I got to tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates, people not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim.
So we actually just did a topic today on the decline of monogamy and how newer generations are starting to consider monogamy to be an outdated concept, and it's not even something that they can really reliably trust or believe in, which of course I think is stupid. I'm getting married this September, and I'm unbelievably excited to get married and share my life with her, but you understand where it's coming from. So the reasons given, at least from what I remember in this study, was they wanted to have their financial situation on stable footing. They wanted to be able to prove to themselves that they were independent. That might be the most toxic one of all of them, because humanity is not meant to live independently. The idea of independence is something that rose with feminism, and we have to learn to be independent and live on our own, but that does not mean we were meant to live a life purely alone or of total independence. We always are going to have to rely on other people in our lives. It's the finances. It's the fact that people feel priced out of the economy. They don't feel like they have a way of getting forward. So if they want to build their career, they feel like they have to do this alone. And a lot of times it comes down to the horror stories that come from personal anecdotal evidence from whatever celebrity or influencer that you follow online, which is another one. We have kind of farmed out our friend groups to influencers who are paid and benefit from sharing stories that kind of amplify the horrors of all the problems between men and women. So in the study that I was reading, it said that men invariably were just a little bit more likely to believe that monogamy works and to believe in a relationship, but it wasn't a far gap between the two. So the fact of the matter is, when it comes to the gender divide, both genders play a role in why things are the way they are now. You just simply pick your influencer and they will tell you all the reasons why it is the other gender's fault for what is going on right now. And I think that's a problem in a lot of ways. I think that it contributes to a world of hot takes and headlines that are manipulated to make you feel a certain way, and it ignores the nuance of the situation, which is that as a society, generationally, we've gotten ourselves into this predicament together, and we will always likely end up making it worse for the generation that comes after us. But we are, as a whole, the product of what came before us. So, look, I'm rambling a little bit here. I don't really know how I feel about this, other than the fact that I think that Gen Z, despite the fact that I believe that they should hold themselves responsible for their own actions, that they are going to have to figure it out one way or the other, lest they end up becoming reliant on the government to solve their problems. I think that they should take responsibility for their situations and they should own their actions. But I can't pretend to not understand where the nihilism comes from. And I think when you get fed the pick yourself up by the bootstraps statements from your favorite influence, or from the corporate media, for the media, it's a lot different than when you hear stories of success from influencers. I think as a whole, we would all do better, and I could certainly do better by spending more time in the real world as opposed to online. And for the fact that they name all of these trends that are coming out, calling it cutesy is one thing, but the sad fact of the matter is they are simply putting labels to phenomenons that have existed for generations. Quiet quitting is nothing new. Feeling stunted and living at home until your mid-20s is nothing new. Plenty of millennials did this as well. It just didn't have a label. So can we all get along? Can we all solve our issues and come together with a breadth of nuance and understanding to solve our problems? Sadly, my time doing this job says probably not, but I would like to see it as such. But let me know down below, guys, what do you think about the phenomenon of the label of stay-at-home sons? Do you think that Gen Z is unique in how they perceive the job market? Do you think that who do you think's at fault for everything that's going on right now? I know you have an opinion, because everyone has an opinion about whose fault it is that we got ourselves into this mess. But let me know down below, guys. If you don't know what it is, the podcast is Pop Culture Crisis. We are live Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is noon Pacific. We would love to see you there, guys. Later. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.